Cops harass elderly veteran. Unaware her son is the deadliest Delta Force commander in history. Margaret Maggie Hayes was a 72-year-old Vietnam War veteran who had seen her share of battles. She lived a quiet life in the small town of Cedar Ridge, where everyone knew her as the kind but tough old lady who never backed down from a fight. What no one knew, however, was that her son, Jack Hayes, was the most lethal Delta Force commander in U.S. military history. Jack had been off the grid for years, running covert operations in the world's most dangerous regions. Maggie hadn't seen him in over a decade, but she never stopped praying for his safety. One sunny afternoon, Maggie was sitting on a bench outside a local coffee shop, enjoying her usual black coffee and a book. Suddenly, a police cruiser pulled up, and two officers stepped out. Officer Dan Harris, a brash and corrupt cop with a reputation for bullying, approached her. "Ma'am, you're loitering. You need to move along," Harris said, his tone dripping with condescension. Maggie looked up, her sharp blue eyes locking onto his. "I'm sitting on a public bench, officer. I'm not causing any trouble." Harris smirked. "I don't care. You're disturbing the peace. Now move, or I'll arrest you." Maggie stood her ground. "I fought for this country so you could wear that badge. I'm not going anywhere." What followed was a scene that would soon go viral. Harris and his partner forcibly grabbed Maggie, twisting her arm behind her back and slamming her against the cruiser. Bystanders filmed the encounter as Maggie, despite her age and frailty, resisted with the grit of a seasoned soldier. The officers handcuffed her and threw her into the back of the squad car, claiming she had assaulted them. The video spread like wildfire. The town was divided. Some supported Maggie, while others believed the cops' version of events. What no one knew was that Maggie's granddaughter, Sarah, had secretly contacted her father, Jack, using an old emergency code he had given her years ago. Jack Hayes was in the middle of a high-stakes mission in Eastern Europe when he received the message. His heart sank as he read the words, "Grandma's in trouble. They're hurting her. Please come home." Without hesitation, Jack abandoned his mission and boarded a private jet, his mind racing with worry and anger. When Jack arrived in Cedar Ridge, he didn't announce his presence. Instead, he observed. He watched as the corrupt cops continued their reign of terror, targeting the weak and vulnerable. He saw how the town's police chief, a man named Carl Riggs, turned a blind eye to Harris's abuses. Jack knew he had to act, but he also knew he had to be smart about it. Jack visited Maggie at her home. The moment she saw him, her eyes filled with tears. "You came," she whispered. "I'm sorry it took me so long," Jack replied, his voice heavy with guilt. "I'll make this right." Over the next few days, Jack began dismantling the corruption piece by piece. Using his Delta Force training, he gathered evidence of the cops' illegal activities, drug trafficking, bribery, and extortion. He also discovered that Harris and Riggs were working for a local crime lord named Victor Kane, who had deep ties to organized crime. But Jack's quiet investigation didn't go unnoticed. Harris, paranoid and desperate, decided to strike back. He kidnapped Sarah, leaving a note for Jack. "Back off, or the girl dies." That was the final straw. Jack's calm, methodical approach gave way to raw, unrelenting fury. He stormed the police station, taking down every officer who stood in his way. When he finally confronted Harris, the corrupt cop tried to play tough, but one look at Jack's cold, dead eyes told him he was outmatched. "Where's my daughter?" Jack growled. Harris stammered, "Kane's warehouse." "But you'll never make it out alive." Jack didn't respond. He simply knocked Harris out cold and headed for the warehouse. The warehouse was a fortress, guarded by armed thugs. But Jack was a one-man army. He moved like a shadow, taking out guards with precision and efficiency. When he finally found Sarah, she was tied to a chair, her face bruised but her spirit unbroken. "I knew you'd come," she said, her voice trembling. Jack untied her and hugged her tightly. "I'll never let anything happen to you again. As they made their way out, Kane appeared, flanked by his men. "You think you can just waltz in here and take what's mine?" he sneered. Jack didn't waste time with words. He engaged Kane's men in a brutal firefight, using every trick in his arsenal. When the smoke cleared, Kane was the only one left standing. He tried to run, but Jack caught him and delivered a swift, merciless justice. With Kane and his network dismantled, Jack turned his attention to the corrupt cops. He handed over the evidence to the FBI, ensuring that Harris, Riggs, and their accomplices would face the full force of the law. As the town began to heal, Jack knew it was time to make amends with his family. He apologized to Maggie for his absence and promised to be there for Sarah. For the first time in years, the Hayes family felt whole again. But Jack's work wasn't done. As he stood on the porch of Maggie's house watching the sunset, he knew there were more battles to fight, both abroad and at home. And he would be ready for them.